Hey, Gobin here. It's Gobin time with a guide on our new cracked Harmony unit that, during testing, felt a bit too strong to me, considering she's supposed to have a niche. We are here today on the Creator Experience server, so things are subject to change, but it should be relatively minor if so. Her kit and complexities and mechanics should all stay the same outside of niche cases, and I'll update you guys with any changes. So today I'll be talking about that kit of hers, how it works and how to abuse it, as well as reviewing her Eidolons and signature. We'll talk about her best builds and stacked goals, as well as team compositions. There's lots of cool stuff to talk about today, so smash that sub button if you want to win your next 50-50, and let's begin. Robin is a 5-star physical Harmony unit, our second of said combo, and the first Harmony unit that really brings the harm in Harmony. Among base stats, her most notable one is that high base attack, which she absolutely will be using, as well as that very high energy cost of 160. For Trace priority, focus on her ultimate, then skill, then talent. Basics do not need any leveling. Onto that kit. Her basics are standard, nothing too special. Her skill, however, gives a 3-turn team-wide damage buff of up to 50%, slightly weaker than Ruan Mei's. It also decreases at the start of her turn, being an aura buff. Her talent, Tonal Resonance, is a permanent team-wide 20% crit damage. She also gains 2 energy whenever an ally attacks an enemy, including her own basic attacks. This means high-frequency attacks will let her generate that 160 cost ultimate much easier. But the real source is that ultimate. Welcome to Vox Harmonique, Opus Cosmique. Robin enters the Concerto state, completely removing herself from the action bar and giving massive buffs, as we will see. She also becomes immune to crowd control debuffs. The Concerto state has a countdown and is placed on the action bar with a fixed and unchangeable speed of 90. When it finishes the countdown, Robin takes her turn immediately. This means during her ult, no matter how much speed you have on her, you will have to wait 111 AV for her to act again. This means she can't generate SP or even energy outside of external sources like her talent. Also, if you clear a wave in MOC, your AV resets, and thus so will Concerto, so you can really stall this out. Now, Concerto isn't just a fancy icon, it does some crazy things. First, when Robin enters Concerto, all other allies immediately take action no matter what, even if they were delayed. This keeps the action order you currently have, so it's like a team-wide Bronya skill. The best case scenario is letting all allies move and then ulting after to get all of them 2 back-to-back actions. But it's okay if you don't ult directly after, just don't ult when they're near their turns. Your allies will always act twice every Concerto. You will need 180 effective speed on your team or the Concerto to reset on the second wave in order for your team to act 3 times. During Concerto's duration, all allies also get buffed by a crazy amount based on Robin's attack. Considering a well-built Robin can reach 4k attack, you could be hitting attack buffs of over 1k to all allies, which is insanity. For reference, Tingyun buffs around 500 to 600 on a single carry. This also buffs herself, of course, so that's at least 2 allies with a massive attack buff, 3 with a dual DPS team. And if that wasn't enough, every attack from allies now has a proc of additional damage from Robin. It does 120% of her attack, and she has a fixed crit ratio of 100 to 150, so you don't even need to build crit, but you also can't buff her crit. Attack percent and damage percent and death shred can all still buff its damage though. Again, high frequency attacks can abuse this greatly. It is additional damage though, they are not follow-ups. So it does not give her energy, it does not do toughness damage, and it doesn't proc things like cogs. You can expect around 10k procs, but I've seen up to 20k, and this is every attack. Finally, her technique is a pretty cute one and gives an OK 5 energy at the start of a wave. Since it is a dimension, I wouldn't prioritize it over another one unless your rotation really needs it. Speaking of energy, her A6 gives her 5 energy on top when using her skill for 35 energy. This is pretty big, and if you have the SP, using that skill to secure the ult can be worth it, even if your skill's buff is up already. Her A4 gives all allies follow-up attacks in the Concerto state a 25% crit damage boost. Just like Sparkle gives quantum units higher attack percent, it is a bonus synergy, not a reason to force Robin into only follow-up teams. She is way too good for that. And her A2 gives a 25% advance forward when entering battle, so only on the first wave. This is like multiplying her speed by 1.33 recurring. But an easier way of finding what speed you want to build on Robin is by multiplying the speed you want to hit on her first turn by 0.75. So if I want to outspeed a 160 speed unit, I want 121 speed. This helps her get her skill off immediately and buff all allies, like a mini inbuilt Bonwhack. All in all, her kit is like a 5-star Tingyun. The attack is bigger and team-wide. The damage percent is similar and team-wide. The additional damage procs are stronger and are on every single ally attacks during Concerto. Robin doesn't give energy like Tingyun, but extra turns equates to more energy anyway, and is for the whole team. The only thing Robin lacks is SP generation like Tingyun, but then again, Robin can advance units that can generate SP. Robin being similar in kit and much stronger means Robin will be sitting very nicely in the meta at a high tier. Now let's check out her Eidolons, and of course her E1 is a banger. Whilst in Concerto, all allies will now get a 24% res pen buff, or a 1.24 times or higher buff to all allies damage, which is incredible. It's also just a better Ruan Mei E1, even with Death Shred stacked on top. Her E2 gives allies 16% speed during Concerto, and now she gets 3 energy per ally attack. Follow-up teams don't really have energy problems, and to be honest, the rest clear fine without this extra energy. Also, the speed from my testing is pretty useless. 164 speed would be needed on your DPS to take advantage of it, that or dance shenanigans. Her E4 is a Dispel on ult and 50% F-res during Concerto. This is obviously for Aventurine. Without him, it's okay, but with him, it gives full debuff immunity to your whole team outside of fixed debuffs. Her final Eidolon gives her 8 nukes every time she enters Concerto, as she will have 8 attacks with 600% crit damage. Now let's check out her builds, starting with Relics. All she wants for Christmas is attack percent, so you're going to give her that. 4-piece physical would be her best since it gives attack percent and damage, however the attack percent takes a while to max out since her additional attacks do not count. Also, farming 4 physical is pain. Instead, I would opt for a 2-piece combo of 2 prisoner, 2 musketeer, or 2 physical. The attack percent sets would buff her damage and buffs, whilst 2-piece physical would buff her damage a little bit more, though you'd get no attack buff increase. You can give her 2 hack space if you have a specific breakpoint in mind, but we'll see her speed requirements are quite low 99% of the time. Also, 4 hacker isn't doing anything out of super fast ally builds. For Planar Ornaments, most should opt for Fleet of the Ageless or Spacing Station if you have no fleet. Fleet is a much bigger buff to everyone. You can also use Von Whack. The energy can come into play with certain setups and the advance can be nice. Considering the giant advance from her A6 and Von Whack, you can end up not directly behind, but pretty close behind your team's first actions, meaning you can basic into ult immediately instead of waiting. This lets them start pumping out damage with their ultimates. You don't need to do this though, as even without Von Whack, you can just always ult after the team's second action and it does the same thing. For main stats, you'll opt for an attack chest, attack or speed boots, attack or physical damage orb, and always an energy rope. Don't go attack rope unless maybe you're zero cycling. Attack boots are generally better, as we'll see her speed is pretty irrelevant to get high, and the orb choice is up to your preference. Attack orb is a 100 plus attack buff to all allies, but physical damage is a nice buff to her own damage. Considering the fact that you can't roll damage percent, a physical orb with high attack percent substat rolls can be amazing for her, giving her a similar buff to allies whilst boosting her own damage. So on to the topic of speed, which will probably be an important one going through to release. She specifically boosts allies forward immediately, and she has a fixed speed during Concerto, so she is tied to cycle breakpoints, but also can't always meet them due to her 90 speed after ulting. This means we want to fit our desired amount of ultimates within a reasonable amount of AV. 117 speed is the bare minimum, giving you 2 actions on Robin in the first cycle of Wave 1. 120 speed gets you to Fleet, Von Whack or Space Ceiling breakpoints. 121 speed lets you outspeed 160 speed allies on the first cycle of Wave 1. Anything further is subject to your own rotations and situations, and more speed does not see you gain benefits in 99% of cases. This is from simulations and testing. This is because her ult is so varying in rotation and you don't always want to ult instantly, and she also spends most of her time in Concerto where her speed is fixed at 90. For example, if you always exit Concerto at max energy on Robin, your speed is irrelevant because she instantly ults. If you have a 2-turn ult, including the turn she exits Concerto, you're always going to get 3 ults in 650 AV at base speed. A bit more speed won't benefit you, all the way until 150 speed. You'll always get a certain amount of ults, and any extra ults without RNG energy requires too much of an increase in speed. Also, 134 speed doesn't do anything for her. This is because if you wanted to do anything, you'd have to clear the first wave, not have Concerto anymore for the second wave, and then specifically need 2 turns to ult, and you don't have a 134 speed DPS. So to summarize, you can have more speed in subs, but aim for 120, 121 in most cases. So for stat goals, we'd aim for 121 speed, at least 3.5k attack, and then defensive stats. This could be 50% F-res with Aventurine, or just a bunch of HP and defense. Let's see Lycone starting with her signature. Her 1 gives her stacking and easily maxed energy generation. When ulting, this energy disappears and transforms into a new buff. This gives her self-attack percent, which in turn buffs allies' attack, and it gives team damage percent, which in turn buffs her own damage during Concerto. The energy buff starts stacking again after her ultimate, so you'll have a massive 15% energy for nearly the whole duration between your two ultimates. For E1 versus S1, S1 gives her building comfort, and E1 gives a bigger damage increase to the team. It is very synergistic and great, but we have other options. Robin's Light Cone gives us a nice amount of energy, a skill point here and there, and high 5-star base stats for her damage and buffs. If your DPS is also after Robin, you get a cheeky bonus too when skilling, but it's nothing major. Ruan Mei's Light Cone can technically be used for its stats and effects, but why did you pull this without Ruan Mei? She also can't abuse the break effect or gain the break effect based skill points. Her free-to-play signature is focused solely on her own damage and slightly on team buffing with the attack percent. In her best team, if you ult fine without the energy from another cone, I guess you can use it, but this cone needs many ally attacks for good ult rotations. As the Cogs Prophet, I must mention Memories of the Past and Cogs. They are much weaker in Robin personal damage over the other options, but technically offer the best energy. You won't be basic attacking all that much though, and using a skill to guarantee your ult is ideal anyway, even if your skill buff is already up. So these are last options, and her free-to-play signature can see better results in her best teams. As for energy rotations, Robin is weird again. You have multiple options to fast forward your ult, and RNG attacks during this long Concerto duration will change things anyway. Not all allies will attack, some allies will attack more, and your speed is very varying depending on the situation of the fight. You also don't want to ult instantly because you could get your ult 1 AV before your allies are going to act. So there isn't a true energy rotation for Robin, rather ways we can speed things up. On Robin's side, you'll always have an energy rope, and a 5% energy planar can help in some cases. For ally sources, you have Huohuo with an insane 32 energy, as well as a possible 16 from Quid Pro Quo on Abundance units. If your healer is faster than your other units, you get a guaranteed 16 energy for Robin from Quid Pro Quo, as your healer will take action first when everyone is advanced, and your other allies should most of the time be above 50% energy when Concerto starts in an ideal setup. Now let's go on to a comparison with Ruan Mei, our other dual DPS buffer. This will be analytical and both are amazingly strong, okay? I've said this before, but Ruan Mei's buffs were always good, but not insane. In Hypercarry, for example, she's beaten by Bronya or Sparkle because they are Hypercarry buffers. It's the comfort of using her decent buffs, her buffs being team-wide, her SP positivity, and survivability benefits that make Ruan Mei so good. So let's compare buffs. Ruan Mei's full buff count is 25% res pen, 68% damage, 50% weakness break efficiency, 10% speed, 20% break effect, and she does okay damage every time you break or an enemy returns from break. This is 16 to 20k on elites breaking and 6 to 9k when returning from break. Robin's full buff count is 50% damage, 1000 plus attack, 20% crit damage, 25% crit damage on follow-ups, and a team-wide advance which is hard to quantify. But in the best case scenario, it equals you doing double your damage for one turn, since you're taking 2 turns instead of 1 in that amount of time. And then every attack during Concerto does 10 to 20k damage from Robin, so each ally attack is kind of like breaking an elite with Ruan Mei damage-wise. Considering you should get at least 4 attacks per Concerto and can go even higher, she easily outdamages Ruan Mei's personal break damage. If we compare buffs on a single DPS, let's choose Welt, we get the following numbers. Welt in 3 turns with 3 skills, 1 ult does 93k damage with no buffs. With Ruan Mei buff uptime, including her instant ult with a Vonwhack, you get 201k in 4 actions, since we also include the speed buff, which might not always net you a new turn. With 3 actions, you drop to 166k. Robin's buffs give him nearly the same in this simulation, which is kind of funny. Now for dual DPS, let's revisit my old Black Swan Kafka simulations. With Robin instead of Ruan Mei, we see a 15% increase, and that's with Black Swan spamming skill on Robin's team. Since we don't have enough SP, this goes down to about a 3.5% increase if Black Swan does skill basic. Remember, Kafka follow-ups a ton, which procs Robin's additional damage, and we also have Luwatcher, who basic attacks constantly. With Haw, the gap is narrower, but then we also get more Robin ults anyway. Anyway, this is all simulations and not real practice, it's just to show just how strong Robin's buffs are, even in Ruan Mei's best 2 DPS team. Now in practice, on MOC 11, Robin Black Swan Kafka cleared just as fast as Ruan Mei Black Swan Kafka, if not Ruan Mei a bit faster, both doing one cycle. This team was not optimized for Robin ult timings, but either way, this means if you don't have Ruan Mei, Robin is a viable replacement. Just like Ruan Mei can replace Robin in her teams too. Every team that uses Ruan Mei can probably use Robin at an equal power, with some teams favoring one or the other. Break teams are still Ruan Mei's best niche, and she won't easily be replaced there. Robin's niche is follow-ups, where she beats Ruan Mei's performance by quite a bit. Now for synergies, we have high-frequency attackers like Dr. Ratio, Topaz, Aventurine, Clara. Topaz and Dr. Ratio of course synergize perfectly with her since they attack multiple times a turn. They also desperately want attack buffs, so that 1k attack is very welcome. The bonus synergies like energy for Robin and crit damage for follow-ups further cement this. The new best follow-up team and one of the best teams in the game now is the Rat team with Robin. For Harmony synergies, I enjoy Bronya, with Slow Sparkle being a possible replacement to Bronya. Every time your team advances with Robin, provided you're running a -1 Bronya setup, your DPS is advanced twice. So they can take a turn, be advanced by Bronya, take a turn, be advanced by Robin, take a turn, be advanced by Bronya again, and take a turn, all back to back. This is like Sparkle, but cooler and gives us the most possible actions in one cycle. You'd need a boatload of SP or a low SP consumption DPS though. Blade isn't buffed by the attack sense, so I wouldn't run it with him. But this is also why Robin can be used in break teams, since extra actions are massive for break units. Other teams that Robin can synergize in are things like Herta, Himiko, dual DPS, Black Swan, Kafka. Any dual DPS team that works already can use Robin as their new best in slot Harmony, or a weaker but viable replacement if you didn't pull Ruan Mei. She could be used with any DPS outside of really Blade and works in hypercarry or dual DPS setups, even triple DPS setups considering a unit like Aventurine. She is also her own carry, with her additional damage often having more damage than the sub DPS. To further amplify the fact that her own damage is so nice, I 5-cycled MOC 11 with a meme team of Zila, Bronya, Luwatcher with multiplication, all on basic spam, since they all gain advance forward with basics, letting Robin be the main carry. This isn't even with them on high speeds, since this server has some pretty poor relic choices. If you want to see any more content on Robin during this early access week, let me know below and I might end up doing a second video with your guys' suggestions. Either way, like and smash that sub button if you want to win your next like-owned pulls. Thank you to my amazing YouTube members, and have a Guoba day.